with me to Second Corinthians. Turn with me to Corinthians chapter 5. Corinthians chapter 5, verses 7. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 7. For we live by faith, not by sight. I'll read it again. For we live by faith, not by sight. Actually, 2016, this year, March 13, I was asking the Lord to speak to me. I have started my final semester in Korea. I was writing my thesis, and I was a little bit distracted by some of the things, and some of the things were not happening, and they were not going the way I planned to be happen. So I started asking the Lord, okay, everything happens according to your will. So there is nothing that happens apart from your will. So I agree with that. And I asked the Lord, as I'm going to finish within few months, like 4 or 5 months, I asked the Lord to speak to me. I prayed for about 2-3 days. I just went off for my studies. I took like the time we have some prayer rooms, and I went there. I started spending much time in prayer. And then one day, as I was praying in the morning, God spoke to me this verse, saying that, for we live by faith, not by sight. I didn't understand what God trying to talk to me. Because usually, when we are in those kind of situations, we usually expect like verses from like Joshua 1:8, don't fear, for I will be with you. Or we'll be expecting like, I go before you, or I will be with you. Usually we expect those kind of promises to be given to us. But when I was praying, God has spoke to me from this verse, for we live by faith, not by sight. I was not satisfied with this verse. Again, I started asking the Lord, Lord, you have to speak to me more. You have to speak to me more. As I was praying, God has been continuously speaking to me about faith. Sometimes He was reminding me about the meaning of the faith. Sometimes He was reminding me about the faith heroes. And so He has been keep on reminding me about those things. Then one day, I thought, it's my foolish to ask God to speak to me again and again, though God was speaking to me. Again, I came back to the same words which God has spoken to me for the first time. For we live by faith, not by sight. So then I started thinking about the words, what God is trying to talk to me by saying we live by faith. Many times, it's a common statement that we make, right? If somebody asks you, like, how you're going to study, if somebody asks you how is you going to be future, we say one word, like we say, yes, I'm going to live by faith. I'm going to study by faith. I'm going to do ministry by faith. But what does it mean, living by faith, exactly what we think? I asked some of my friends, and we often, even from my life, many times so far, beginning from 2004, I became a Christian. It's almost about 12 years. Throughout the 12 years of my life, what I understood of the living by faith was, mostly, it was physical needs. It's like, many times we think, living by faith was like, I prayed, I need something in my life. I wanted something to be happen to me, and I prayed about it, and God has provided me that what I need, therefore I live by faith. Was it all about living by faith? Just fulfilling the physical needs, which we need? I need some money, I prayed, God has given me. I wanted some admission, God has given me, so that's what living by faith. Of course, it may be the part of living by faith, but it is not all about living by faith. If you say the living by faith is just about getting what we need, means we are limiting our living by faith. Just limiting. And we need to understand, we are living in an uncertain world. And we are going to the ministry to be ministering in this uncertain world. As we are going to the uncertain world, we need to live by faith. And that living by faith is not just getting what we need in this world. It's beyond that. So then I started thinking about it. And one day, I started meditating on the book of Hebrews. And I started reading from Hebrews chapter 11, where we see like abbreviation of the faith, meaning of the faith, and then it deals with the faith heroes step by one he was dealing. And then in Hebrews chapter 11, verses 8 to 10, where we see about the man of faith, Abraham. Then I read those 3 verses. Hebrews chapter 11 verses 8 to 10. Let's read it down. Hebrews chapter 11 verses 8 to 10. By faith, Abraham, when he called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. Verse 10. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. So I started meditating upon it, and when I read these three verses, I could understand what does it really mean by living by faith. So now today we're going to learn what is it exactly living by faith beyond just getting what we need. Again, I tell you, of course, God provides us what we need, but don't think it is all about living by faith. Okay? So now, what is that we need to learn living by faith? The first one, living by faith means accepting God's call without knowing where it will lead. If you look at verse 8, Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8, it says, by faith Abraham, when he called to go to a place where he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went out, and even though he doesn't know where he was going. Three things we need to remember. When God called Abraham to go, he did three things. One, he obeyed and he went out. He took a step by faith. And as he was going, though he doesn't know where he was going. You see Genesis chapter 12 verses 1. God called Abraham, leave your place and leave your people and go to the place that I show you. What God said? Go to the place that I show you. And Abraham doesn't know where to go. God didn't tell, okay, this place would be like this, so the people would be like this, the culture would be like this, their lifestyle would be like this, you would be getting these things if you go. If you go, these things will happen, and the people would be... God didn't explain anything. He just said, leave your place and go to the place that I show you, that's all. And Abraham, when you look back at the history, Abraham was not a simple man. He was one of the richest persons those days. And you know where he was coming? He was coming from the place called Ur of Chaldees. The Ur of Chaldees was one of the world-class cities in those days, 4,000 years ago. And the land was a flourishing land, Ur. Those days, around 250,000 people, which means 250,000 people were living in the country. And that country was the land of like mathematics, astronomy, and many scientists people are coming and staying there. And from all over the world, people would love to come and settle in that city. And Abraham was coming from the city, having the most luxurious life, having a most satisfied life, and he was seen as a successful man by any kind of human standards. And at that moment, God called Abraham, leave your people, leave your place, and go to the place that I show you. What did Abraham do? What did he do? He didn't question anything. He just obeyed and he went out without knowing where to go. If I were there, I would have asked, okay, Lord, you said to go. Okay, I will go. But tell me, what kind of people would be there? Tell me, what is the money they use? Tell me, what is the culture? Tell me what you are going to give me if I go there. Because I'm already a prosperous man behind here. All these things I would have asked. But Abraham, he didn't ask even a single question. He just went out. And when he was going, do you think that people might have encouraged him? Okay, Abraham, good. God talked to you. Okay, we encourage you. Go. No encouragement. There was no encouragement, I guess. Because already he was a flourishing man there. And people might have asked when Abraham started, hey, Abraham, where are you going? He said, I don't know where I'm going because God called me, so I'm just following him. And what people might have thought? He might have thought Abraham was a crazy man. Because he was giving up his wealth, he was giving up all his friends, he was giving up all the things that he had behind, just going on the call of an unseen God. The basic step of living by faith, it begins with the obedience. He doesn't know how the city is going to be that God has told him. He doesn't know how it's gonna be his life. And those days it's not so good to travel from one place to another place. We know, right? If you read Abraham's history, how many times he struggled a lot. One king comes and take away his wife, and some people comes and they fight with him, and all those things. But yet, he was obedient. When God called, there was no promise of like a luxurious life of future. Yet, we need to be obedient. We need to be obedient. Saint Augustine, he wrote an article on faith, and he says, faith is to believe what you don't see. In reward of that faith, you will see what you believe. We need to believe without seeing. And then we see what we believe. Same thing Abraham did. When God called Abraham, he just left everything. One thing we need to understand. When God called us, that may not be so comfortable for us when God called us. But yet, we need to come out of all the comfort zones to take the calling, which may not be comfortable for us. But yet, we need to take it out. And Abraham was called as a blessed man. He was called as a man of faith. And all the things followed up by this single decision. It was so uncertain to Abraham, He doesn't know anything. It was so uncertain. But only certainty that Abraham had, what was the certainty of Abraham's faith? God called him, therefore he should obey. That's all. You need to think how much obedient we are. Of course, we are studying and we are training ourselves. And we need to remember how much obedient we are. How much obedient we are in taking a step of action. We talk a lot about faith, right? We talk a lot about defending the faith, and we preach many times about faith. But when it comes to our personal life, what is our standard of living by faith? So living by faith begins with a single principle that was the basic is obedience. Obedience. It begins with the obedience.